to 4 balls, then you get to 5 balls. And then, for whatever reason, the lights go out, you miss your step, you drop one of the balls. And then there goes all of the magic, there goes all of the wonder. You lose the captivation of the audience, but you can also or always regain that momentum just when you get your balance and you start to introduce slowly, of course, more and more balls to the equation. And nobody knows that better than persons who work, I guess, in this industry, not just news and entertainment or show business, but our cousins in politics. And whether you are, a random circus clown like Lincoln Bain, to the most trained, most professional performer like Mr. Michael Pintard, you would know, you would understand exactly what I'm talking about. But ladies and gentlemen, once again, welcome to our program, Issues of the Day. And speaking of Mr. Bain, I caught last evening what seemed to be his birthday party held by the Coalition of Independents, live streamed on Facebook last evening. And I saw as they had Mr. Bain seated in a rather large throne, I believe at the head table, where members of the Coalition of Independents paid tribute, gave tributes to him. And I thought to myself as I watched it for the 10 or 15 minutes that I did, me along with what seemed to be about 90 other Bahamians who, following dinner perhaps, was scrolling on social media when they came across it themselves. But I thought to myself as I saw Mr. Bain sitting there in that throne, of course, Warren Jeffs, David Koresh, even Jim Jones down there in Guyana, the Kool-Aid guy, never got that kind of treatment. So it certainly does signal to the seriousness, I suppose, of Mr. Bain's movement. But you can go ahead and give us a call, 326-8255, 322-5683, 322-5477, as we kick off an open line show on the program Issues of the Day, as we usually do on Mondays and Fridays. Ladies and gentlemen, please pardon. I know I made an announcement on Friday about Jones and Co. over the weekend. On Sunday, we were supposed to have, or we were expected to have, the Minister of National Security. However, based off of course, Friday and how that went, of course, a very heavy day. The funeral of Mr. Vaughn Miller that made that impossible, of course, to fit into the schedule. Nonetheless, I will update you on when that episode of Jones and Co. will be taped and aired. But Friday did not happen. Hopefully this week, hopefully today, it perhaps can happen. But we had several questions to ask Mr. Monroe, which we will ask him at the opportune time. But questions consistent with what is happening in the region. And once again, we'll talk about that a little bit later based off of some of the things that I have seen over the weekend. One thing that I saw that was very, very interesting, of course, was Mia Motley, a video of Mia Motley speaking and talking about climate, or talking really about the questions that she was asked at the time. And it was a video that I think, of course, was from an interview that was had quite a few years ago. And in that interview, the interviewer asks Ms. Motley about a referendum on same-sex marriage in Barbados and whether persons in Barbados who are in same-sex relationships should be allowed to do so. And she was hailed by quite a few different, mainly liberal world leaders as absolutely shutting down the journalists who asked the question. by flipping the question and telling the journalist that the question is not about whether or not these people should be allowed to do so, but the question is whether or not they should be discriminated from doing so. And in many cases, I think it is widely known, of course, you can research it. Mia Mottley, even before becoming the Prime Minister of Barbados, was a very, very rigid pro LGBTQ activist. And since then, Barbados has recognized, I believe, same sex civil unions at the very least. And I wonder or I question whether or not some of these leaders, especially those who many persons within our region have found very popular, I believe because of their aggressive stance on certain issues. But I happen to disagree with Prime Minister Mottley on quite a few. And that issue there, of course, I don't think that referendum ever happened, or maybe it did, but I could not find, in terms of my research, any results in terms of the poll numbers of those individual questions or that individual question asked to Bajans. What I did find was that in March of 2015, there was a poll that was conducted in Barbados that asked the question on whether or not Barbados should retain a constitutional monarchy or move to a Republican system of government. Of course, a move that has been made in Barbados. But if you look at these poll numbers, they reveal a resounding no to then Prime Minister Mottley's call for a republic. 64% of those polled wanted to retain a constitutional monarchy. The total poll was 866 persons, 40% of them female, 60% of them male. So what led to that decision? And of course, I'm still looking to find some sort of referendum results. But I listened to this video, Mrs. Mottley pontificating, I thought, on quite a few different issues that I do not believe that we share the same opinions on. However, Barbados does have, I believe, currently still the chairmanship of CARICOM, and Ms. Mottley is never shy in expressing that. All that, notwithstanding all of that, I still one day would like the opportunity to interview Ms. Mottley. But what was interesting that I saw after that, and of course I'm coming to talk about Hurricane Melissa in just a moment, but before we get to that, and just one last point that Miss Mottley made that I thought was interesting. And she says that, of course, Barbados has the chairmanship of CARICOM, and she says she's not surprised by that fact at this time. Of course, with such an aggressive and serious push being made for reparations, as she calls Barbados, as she explains that Barbados is that country where the modern expression of racism took form. And of course, she's talking about the fact that Barbados was the first country that the English would have settled with chattel slavery in 1627. And while I believe that collectively people throughout the diaspora, people living right here in the Caribbean, throughout the various different countries, be it Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, or Belize, or the Bahamas, or Barbados, or Guyana, the list goes on and on, that in our collective memory, all of our peoples and societies certainly have memory of the history of colonialism, of slavery, of the dehumanization of many of our ancestors or a whole people. But does the fact that it happened in Barbados first give Prime Minister Mottley any authority, any leadership on the issue of reparations, especially when our views, when our thoughts, when, of course, our expression may be certainly different from her means or her mode or her choice of doing. So certainly there has been visible, tangible differences in her approach and our Prime Minister's approach. And I've read the editorials, primarily in one newspaper, that seem to challenge the effectiveness, the efficacy of the Prime Minister's campaign in terms of financing and mitigation for a lot of our small island developing states that are affected by hurricane. But as I looked, as I've been listening, as I've been reading, taking my cues, of course, from the information services in Jamaica, as well as the National Disaster Emergency Operations Center here in the Bahamas, which also has been talking about a lot of the effects of Hurricane Melissa, what it's going to look like, what it means, of course, for us in the Bahamas who are expected to experience some of the effects later in the week. Primarily, we're talking about the southern Bahamas, Michael, and Ragged Island. But Jamaica is expected to receive a direct hit by this Category 5 storm. And for many persons, once again, when we talk about the collective memory of these disasters, of these catastrophic events, for many in Jamaica old enough to remember the 12th of September 1988 and Hurricane Gilbert and its devastating effect on Jamaica, causing millions of dollars in damage, as well as devastating the Jamaican economy and starting what would be a long road to recovery. And just this morning, before we started our program, I saw the videos of then from the time capsule, Prime Minister Siaga moving through the streets in different parishes in Jamaica and encouraging people, admonishing people to take the storm seriously, to brace for the storm, as well as listening to the address that he would have given to the nation immediately following the hurricane in Jamaica, Hurricane Gilbert in 1988. But knowing, of course, the risks that hurricanes of this caliber sort of cause, knowing, of course, going through Hurricane Dorian just over 5 years ago and experiencing then some of those devastating factors that led to the loss of life. We understand that following the storm, the most important factor, of course, is going to be the food and shelter needs of persons. And secondly, food and first aid, firstly, and secondly, of course, shelter, which is going to be a concern. And, when we talk about the way that administrations or governments handle these crises, and some of the things that have happened in Jamaica over the past few days as they brace for the passage of this hurricane, policies of the government. I've heard the Minister of Transportation giving an interview, I think it was with some external news outlet, talking about how toll booths have been opened with free fares for people to move, to seek higher ground shelter, to get out of low-lying areas and communities. Listening to the Minister of Water and Environment and those sorts of things, talking as well about the disaster mitigation practices that are being put into effect. And Mr. Holness's government, in dealing with this issue, are going to be graded on several different levels. Of course, one of them is going to be the immediate response to the storm in terms of the planning that is going to go into to ensuring backups and contingencies, and you're talking about keeping the hospital or hospitals going in Jamaica, as well as several essential services, perhaps even the mobilization of the military to facilitate that. But not only that, but even after the storm, through the rebuilding process, the financing process, their ability diplomatically to attract and secure aid, humanitarian aid. And as we saw in the aftermath of Hurricane Dorian, that significant issue that played a crucial part in terms of how the government's response looked. In terms of rescues, and perhaps we can get to that, or we can speak to that issue in terms of rescue efforts that are going to have to be made. That is going to be, as well, once again, another significant issue that we are going to have to look at, or that, of course, is going to have to be looked at. So it's going to be interesting. As I say, our thoughts and our prayers go out to our brothers and sisters there in Jamaica. You know, when we look at, of course, what we can do, and I saw some people online criticizing the fact that throughout the press conference that was held yesterday, and we're going to tune into that for just a moment, that in that press conference that was held yesterday, that very little was said, of course, about Jamaica that is feeling the storm now, or aid efforts that are going to be made. And those people are so wrong, for the very reason that the Bahamas is going to be feeling, of course, the effects of a storm. We have no idea on whether or not the storm is going to intensify or not. We're hoping that it'll be weakened, of course, by hitting Jamaica, then Cuba, perhaps even a little interaction with Hispaniola. But looking at, of course, the effects and how we in the Bahamas can help, it's certainly, and certainly we will be prepared to, but it's going to at first involve us feeling, or us being able to feel, to assess, of course, the aid that is going to have to be administered, I'm sure, following the storm to some islands that could see very negative impacts of this storm. But as I mentioned, when you're talking about, as I've heard, 13, 14 feet of storm surge, 160 mile per hour winds, we can not only sympathize but empathize with the people of Jamaica, who now go through this character building exercise that our nation has gone through. One of the most devastating, natural disasters, or forms of natural disasters that, of course, we have also been forced to look at, or to feel, to look at the effects of climate change, and how stewardship of the planet largely play into the effects of these natural disasters. But I have, ladies and gentlemen, the National Disaster Emergency press conference held yesterday. I want to play it just for a few minutes until we get to, of course, the statement made by Minister Leon Lundy, following which we will continue to talk about the tropical storm a bit, as well as what is going on in Venezuela. So we'll go ahead and listen to that clip for just a few minutes. Feel free to give us a call, 326-8255, 322-5683, or 322-5477, as we are having an open line show today.
Welcome to this first press conference related to the government's an update on the government's response efforts and our state of readiness are the Honorable Minister Leon Lundy, acting managing director of the Disaster Risk Management Authority, Aaron Sargent, and the deputy director of the Bahamas Department of Meteorology, Mr. Jeffrey Green. So to begin with remarks, we'll begin with Director Green, who will give us the latest from the Bahamas Department of Meteorology.
Good evening, everyone. This is alert number 1 on Hurricane Melissa, issued by the Bahamas Department of Meteorology at 6 p.m. today. Hurricane Melissa resumes intensification. Life-threatening and catastrophic flash flooding and landslides expected in portions of Jamaica and southern Hispaniola through midweek, with hurricane-force winds likely to begin tomorrow. A hurricane alert is now in effect for the central and southeast Bahamas and the Turks and Caicos Islands. This includes the islands of Exuma and its keys, Long Island, San Salvador, Cat Island, Aucklands, Crooked Island, Long Key, Maguana, Inagua, and the Turks and Caicos Islands. A hurricane alert means that hurricane conditions could be experienced within the mentioned islands within 60 hours. At 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, the center of Hurricane Melissa was located near latitude 16.4 degrees north and longitude 77.2 degrees west, about 370 miles southwest of Duncantown, Ragged Island, 380 miles southwest of Machutang, Inagua, 450 miles southwest of Salina Point, Aucklands, 478 miles southwest of Providenciales, Turks and Caicos Islands, and 482 miles southwest of Maguana, and 602 miles south of New Providence. Hurricane Melissa is moving towards the west, near 5 miles an hour. This motion is expected to continue this evening. A slow westward motion is expected tonight, followed by a turn to the north and northeast on Monday and Tuesday. On this forecast track, the center of Melissa is expected to move near or over Jamaica on Tuesday, across southeastern Cuba Tuesday night, and across the southeast Bahamas on Wednesday. Maximum sustained winds have increased to near 145 miles an hour with higher gusts. Melissa is a Category 4 hurricane on the Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale. Additional intensification is expected over the next day or so, followed by fluctuations. Melissa is expected to be a powerful major hurricane in Jamaica on Monday night or Tuesday morning, and in southeastern Cuba late Tuesday. Hurricane force winds extend outward up to 30 miles from the center, and tropical storm force winds extend outward up to 205 miles from the center. Residents in the central and southeast Bahamas and the Turks and Caicos Islands should prepare for the possibility of hurricane or tropical storm conditions beginning late Tuesday or early Wednesday morning. Residents in the northern and northwest Bahamas should closely monitor Hurricane Melissa should it continue to move across the forecast track that could bring tropical storm and hurricane conditions to the southwest islands and the southeast Bahamas, including the Turks and Caicos, beginning Tuesday, and the rest of the southeast and central islands on Wednesday through Thursday. However, the magnitude of the potential impacts depends on the intensity of Melissa as it approaches the Bahamas. Melissa is forecast to interact with major mountainous regions in Jamaica and Cuba and Hispaniola, and could potentially weaken the system slightly as it nears the southeast and central Bahamas late Tuesday and Wednesday. Residents in the southeast and central Bahamas, as well as the Turks and Caicos Islands, should brace themselves for prolonged periods of heavy rainfall that will lead to severe flooding, strong winds, and coastal inundation beginning Tuesday, should Melissa forecast track hold. So this basically is saying that we need to prepare. It's a very strong storm, and as it reached the Bahamas, we still expect it to be at least a Category 3, which can be very harmful to our island. So please make preparations now before the storm reaches your island. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Green. We now invite the Minister with responsibility for disaster risk management, the Honorable Leon Lundy, to give additional information on the state of readiness.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, members of the press, and to all Bahamians and residents tuning in across our islands. At this hour, Hurricane Melissa has been battering Jamaica for more than a day, bringing relentless rain, strong winds, and dangerous seas, while severe weather now extends to parts of Hispaniola. It is forecasted to move across sections of Cuba and then toward the southern islands of the Bahamas before reaching the Turks and Caicos Island. Our thoughts and prayers are with our Caribbean brothers and sisters who are already feeling the effects of this dangerous storm. We stand in full solidarity with them, and we are mindful that the same system will begin to influence our own islands in the coming days. For many Bahamians, the word hurricane and the idea of a slow-moving system stir painful memories of Hurricane Dorian. We remember the destruction, the flooding, and the heartbreak that came along with it. That is why we take Hurricane Melissa seriously, because we understand the risks and we know the cost of underestimating a storm of this nature. There's no need for alarm, but right now, preparation should be everyone's focus. The government of the Bahamas is fully engaged and mobilized. All relevant agencies, including the Disaster Risk Management Authority, are working in close coordination. Teams are on alert, resources are being positioned, and communities are being briefed. We are carefully weighing the possibility of evacuations in the southern region, as current forecasts make that increasingly likely. Any decision will be made with careful consideration, guided by expert advice, and with the single purpose of protecting lives. Let me assure the Bahamian people, your government is working, your systems are active, and your safety remains our top priority. We have faced a long and demanding hurricane season, and each storm has strengthened our response network, and today, that network stands ready. But preparedness is not only the work of the government. It begins with each of us. I urge everyone to stay alert, stay informed, and stay connected to the official channels. Follow the advisories from the Disaster Risk Management Authority and the Department of Met. Do not rely on rumors or unofficial reports. Again, I repeat, do not rely on rumors or unofficial reports. This is the time to get storm ready. Check your supplies, secure your property, ensure that your family knows your plan, and look out for your neighbors, especially the elderly and the most vulnerable amongst us. We cannot control the path of Hurricane Melissa, but we can control our level of preparedness. Calm vigilance and collective responsibility are the keys to keeping our nation safe. The strength of the Bahamas has always been the strength of its people, united, disciplined, and resilient in the face of every challenge. Together, we will once again demonstrate this strength. May God protect our islands and keep our people safe, and may He continue to bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Thank you.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, that was the minister responsible for the Disaster Risk Management Authority, the Honorable Leon Lundy, speaking to the hurricane, which is expected to touch down and make landfall officially in Jamaica tomorrow. I know he says that the hurricane has been battering Jamaica, but I believe he's speaking about those associated rains and winds, which have been having a great effect, a great influence, of course, on the weather, the rain, the torrential rain, and high winds that are being faced in Jamaica currently as they prepare or for the passage of the storm. But another point that Mr. Lundy makes, that he reinforces, is the fact that shortly after that storm leaves the area in Jamaica, after it passes Cuba, of course, it is expected to make landfall in the Bahamas as a Category 3 storm, which he then uses as the reason behind encouraging Bahamians to be vigilant, encouraging Bahamians to plan and prepare for the eventual passing of this storm through the Bahamas, which is projected after this storm passes through Jamaica and Cuba. And the expectation, as Mr. Green notes, is that given the major mountainous areas in Cuba and Jamaica, it is expected that this storm weaken. And while it is expected that this storm weakens, a Category 3 storm still could be quite severe. So certainly not the sort of storm where we want to take lightly, these circumstances of an impending or coming storm. And I mentioned Hurricane Gilbert, 1988. The Prime Minister Seaga himself out there with a bullhorn in the streets trying to encourage people to take cover. And of course, since the 1980s, we've seen the passage of all sorts of hurricanes, Michelle, Andrew, Francis, Jean, Irma, Matthew, Dorian, all sorts of hurricanes that has caused, when it comes to how we relate to hurricanes in our culture, of course, a different sort of approach for many persons, as I heard a TV journalist note. For many persons in Jamaica, this is the first storm of this type, of this magnitude, of this severity that they will be experiencing, and hopefully they heed the warnings that the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management in Jamaica has been making, as well as Jamaica, the Jamaican Constabulary Force, and the Jamaican Information Service, and all other organs of the state that are involved in the response. Of course, the same thing with the Bahamas. We've already had in passing, or in the weeks gone by, we had the passage of a tropical storm here through the Bahamas that in itself was a great dress rehearsal, I believe, for what we can expect with this storm that's expected to perhaps make its way to the Bahamas this week. So we expect, despite the fact that the response, I believe, of the DRM over the last tropical storm was pretty good, of course, we expect a greater response, a more organized response, given the time and the ability for us to monitor this storm and how it's affecting other persons. I also worry, and I know we've talked about Jamaica a lot, I worry about Cuba for a few different reasons. Not only as, once again, another one of our sister nations in this region that is expected to receive the brunt of this hurricane as it continues to move, but also because of different issues that aggravate the issues in Cuba, specifically the ongoing electricity issue. And there are more reasons than even the hurricane that pose an issue for that. And I'll tell you exactly why. We're going to take a break in a few minutes, but before we do, um, there was an article that I came across while looking at the response to this hurricane by a lot of those Jamaican government offices and agencies. And one article that I saw in the Gleaner, which was pretty interesting, was an article that said that former Prime Ministers P.J. Patterson and Bruce Golding are among a group of ex-heads of government in the Caribbean who have expressed concern about the military buildup of the United States in the region, urging a pullback to avoid any undermining of peace, stability, and development in the space. In a joint statement, the former Prime Minister said they felt a need to make public their apprehension about the increased military security buildup and the presence of nuclear vessels and aircraft within the Caribbean archipelago, arguing that this has the potential to pull the region into conflicts that are not of its making. As I mentioned, ladies and gentlemen, we have to take a break. When we come back from our break, I'll explain what that means. I'll explain what all of this conflict and bombardment of the Venezuelan coast could mean for other socialist countries in the region like Cuba. We'll take this first break in our program, Issues of the Day. Once again, our number to call here, 326-8255, 322-5683, and 322-5477. We'll be right back. We're back on our program, Issues of the Day, once again. 326-8255, 322-5683, 322-5477. Once again, our number to call here today. We're back live on our program. You can feel free, of course, to tune in to us by radio, by YouTube at the JCN Channel 14 YouTube page, as well as Channel 214 on cable. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm sitting here, I'm listening, of course, to Prime Minister Andrew Holness as well, talking about this hurricane. You can call in, we can talk about hurricanes. But as I signaled before we went to our break, another issue that I want to talk about that sort of makes this issue not only more significant for nations like Cuba, but also because of the conflict or potential for conflict that exists here in the Bahamas. But just to give you an update, Melissa, of course, as I mentioned to you earlier, Tropical Storm Melissa is now a Category 5 hurricane, spinning a little over 100 miles due south of Jamaica. A recent pass from the hurricane hunters found surface winds of over 180 miles per hour in the northwest eye wall. Melissa is expected to make landfall early tomorrow morning in Jamaica as either a Category 4 or 5 hurricane, which would be the first in modern history in Jamaica. Due to the mountainous terrain of the island, wind speeds will be up to 30% higher on the windward upslope sides of the hills and mountains. That means if Melissa maintains this Category 5 intensity up until landfall, wind speeds could exceed 200 miles per hour in the higher elevations of Jamaica. And of course, the wind speed would be higher, or at least 30% higher, the higher that you go. But it says that, or according to ABC 13's Travis Herzog, he says that I'm not an expert in Jamaica's infrastructure, but I will simply point out that when Hurricane Maria made landfall in Puerto Rico as a Category 4 with 155 miles per hour winds in 2017, it took out much of the electrical infrastructure and plunged the island into darkness. Most of the island was still in the dark 2 months later, and it took half a year to get restoration up to 99%. So, of course, we're praying for something to change here and spare Jamaica from this catastrophe. But between the catastrophic forecast for winds and up to what seems to be up to 40, and I hope this is not feet, of rain over mountainous terrain, the nearly 30 million people on Jamaica need to take every precaution possible to survive this hurricane. Prime Minister Holness, and I'd love for us to tune into Mr. Holness. I'm not sure the reliability of the stream that I'm picking up here from Jamaica Information Services, exactly how it will be given the storm conditions that are down there in Jamaica. It's buffering from time to time, so I'd hate to connect that and have to disconnect. But Mr. Holness being frank and honest about some of the issues that are already being experienced there in Jamaica, some of the minor issues that he said, of course, that we have to be in terms of the context in which he said it as Jamaicans, being frank and honest about approaching those. One of those, as he mentioned, that there are people showing up to hurricane shelters, and for whatever reason, persons are not there with the key to open the shelter. So you have the most severe hurricane that Jamaica is ever going to face in the modern history of the region, as well as given the fact that there are conditions that are forming that would seem ominous, and there are people who for whatever reason are not there. And as Mr. Holness says, that these issues are rectified in 20 or 30 minutes, I guess, after somebody's called and told to bring the key. But this is just one example of how the experience of going through these hurricanes perhaps could make people in the Bahamas a little more ready, a little more hesitant, a little more, in many ways, accustomed to some of these things that have to happen in the passage of a hurricane. Hello, you are in Issues of the Day.
Good afternoon, young Mr. Jones. God's blessings to one and all under the sound of my voice, and I pray that this hurricane would not do too much damage. Anyhow, God, He allows some evil for His divine good. Bernice Johnson, the original, and thank you. God bless you. From my son, he said to let you know. Anyhow, I am calling reference. You mentioned Mr. Golding and P.J. Patterson. Now it has brought me into the geopolitics, and I told my commissioner secretary that I have to go rogue in causing the dignity of humanity, not only here for the Bahamas, but for the entire world, because on your show, before you came on, I used to tell everybody, partner 100% with the United States of America because of outstanding files that only prime ministers has to address. I don't know if you remember when Prime Minister Minnis, he said he would rather lose an election than to win an election. Now, probably the senior people would brief you on that.
Can you say that again? Who said?
He would rather lose an election than to win, like how Mia Mottley won.
Who said that? You said
Prime Minister Minnis. Now, that is something reference to outstanding files that were not brought up to him, and that is one of the reasons why I said I told my commissioner secretary I will have to go rogue because of some of the information, the allegations that came out against certain senior government officials. I covered all of the prime ministers. They are not a part of this, and that is one of the reasons why I speak to my local board that he has to be a part, and I told the FNM they would have to call a meeting with him, and they refused to, because it has to be addressed, because some of the politicians, the parliamentarians,
see, the thing that I read about Mr. Golding and Mr. Patterson is that they are expressing their concern over what is happening in the region, the United States of America. Its military has mobilized. You're talking about fleets of F-22 submarines with nuclear capabilities, warheads, all sorts of different things into the region, and they're concerned about the potential for conflict. Has your model boss expressed an opinion as yet on this?
No, he has to be properly updated because we have senior officers and retired and civil servants who are in the global territories that can share certain information that we in the Bahamas are not, but however we can share.
I don't know if they are privy, if these gentlemen are privy to any information that far exceeds what we know now. What we know so far, Ms. Johnson, is that there are 10 vessels that have been bombed in this region, that about 36 persons have been murdered as a result, and that there are equipment, some with nuclear capabilities, strike groups that belong in the Middle East that are being moved into this region. Now, those that once held senior leadership roles that want to comment on anything from filling potholes in the road to labor issues. What do they have to say about these larger thematic issues that include not only the Bahamas but the entirety of CARICOM?
This is a situation of geopolitics.
So the question,
okay?
the question that I put to you is that we've heard from Mr. Golding and Mr. Patterson in this joint statement. Do you believe that we ought to hear from Mr. Ingram and Mr. Christie and Mr. Minnis on their position and how they feel about this. You'll remember it was Dr. Menace who sat in the lobby of Mar-a-Lago with other regional leaders at the beginning of the saga, when President Trump in his first term would have invited all of them to Mar-a-Lago to discuss Venezuela and Maduro.
Exactly, and that's when the Defense Force, Mr. Henfield, he was the minister. And this is one of the reasons why I said the senior, the prime ministers has to be brought up to date, because some of the things they know, because what is going on now can bring a resolve right away, because the threat that DeSantis has made to flatten the Bahamas. We have expatriates who come into these areas, and our people ought not be put at a disadvantage, because the PLP has to hand this nation over, because they have the senior people and they will win golden eyes, because it's all about prime ministers now.
All right, thank you, Ms. Johnson. It seems as if you are campaigning for golden eyes. And I heard the prime minister over the weekend tell PLPs and Golden Isles that they need that seat. As I saw that Mr. Darren Pickstock and his group were on the ground, as well as Mr. Brian B. Brown of the Free National Movement, who was down on the ground as well, with Mr. Pinto and other candidates of the Free National Movement, Michael Barnett, Travis Robinson, and quite a few others. But that is not the issue at hand, Ms. Johnson. The issue at hand right now, as I have mentioned to you, is there have been killings that have been considered to be extrajudicial. That the Minister of National Security, before he has sat down with local reporters, and I am going to be very blistering in my critique of that with him, that he has not spoken to local press in terms of, as Minister of National Security, how he feels about this encroachment in the region by the U.S. military. And he seemed to take the position at the time that it's just something that the U.S. is doing, and it's just going to be that way, that he has no ability to express an opinion that seemed contrary to the interests or the objectives of the United States of America in the region. And while Mr. Maduro, as I saw Senator Lindsey Graham say on Face the Nation last evening with Margaret Brennan, or Senator from Florida, Rick Scott, who spoke on 60 Minutes yesterday, they spoke about this, and they harp on this issue that Mr. Maduro is an indicted drug trafficker in the United States, although he is the titular head for now of Venezuela. But they make the point that he needs to, at this point, be on a one-way flight to either China or Russia, because, as Senator Lindsey Graham said on Face the Nation with Margaret Brennan, something is about to happen. President Trump is, I believe, still in Asia. I don't know, I think I saw a picture with him sitting down with the president of Brazil this morning. But over the last few days, he has been throughout Asia on a tour speaking to leaders. Now, some may argue, as I thought last evening, as I saw Trump taking a victory lap, speaking to the president or the prime minister of Malaysia, speaking to the emperor of Japan, speaking to all of these Asian leaders. And I thought to myself, at such a critical time as this, that he's mobilizing the U.S. military through the region, shouldn't the president have taken a trip to go around perhaps the region and speak to Caribbean leaders on what is happening and what is going on within the region, to reassure regional leaders here, and those like Mr. Patterson and Mr. Golding that have expressed an opinion that this will not, or the Caribbean will not, be a staging scene for some sort of brutal conflict between Venezuela and the USA. Colombia also in the crosshairs of the United States of America, designated as a narco trafficking state. Not only that, when we think about the fact that Mr. Monroe was interviewed as a part of an interview, talking about how the Bahamas itself is a popular narco trafficking state. Could that sort of behavior, if we don't say anything today, if we don't stand up and say anything today about the sovereignty that countries within this region have, could we or should we even expect that this same posture could be taken with the Bahamas if we are seen as not fully or taking as seriously as we ought to the fight against drug trafficking in our country? We have a telephone caller on the line. Hello, you're on Issues of the Day.
Hey, good day, Mr. Jones. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Pat?
I'm good. Thank you. Yes, I really best wishes, and God does all things, and He can do it. So I'm praying for Jamaica, Haiti, Cuba, and of course our Bahamas, because these hurricanes, they're so unpredictable at times. I'm hoping for the best. But, in relation to this Venezuelan American situation, where I saw that interview with Mr. Monroe did with, I think actually it was someone from NBC News affiliate who did the interview with him, because I think it started out in regards to human trafficking, right? And I have one, before I get on to what his response was. The Prime Minister of Trinidad, right? Her response and the country as far as, because you have two citizens that were killed as well, right? The Caribbean, I think the whole Caribbean leadership as a whole should have sent out or come together, have an emergency meeting and discuss that and come out with one response in relation to that. Because if America could do what they're doing now in one country in the Caribbean, it could be any one of us. The Bahamas, with our history and all that stuff, the drug trafficking and human trafficking or whatever, right? We just heard about the report that was done, put out a couple months ago, where their concerns are, who's to say it doesn't happen to one of our or some of our Bahamian brethren?
But my point is, Pat, before we even wait for it to get that far, right? As a country, we believe in the preservation of peace. We have former prime ministers that I believe all of our former prime ministers, including Mr. Christie and Mr. Ingram, have had a turn in chairing CARICOM. You have this statement that is endorsed by Baldwin Spencer, former prime minister of Antigua and Barbuda, Said Musa and Dean Barrow, former prime ministers of Belize, Frudno Stewart, former prime minister of Barbados, Edison James, former prime minister of Dominica, Tillman Thomas, former prime minister of Grenada, Donald Ramotar, former president of Guyana, Bruce Golding and P.J. Patterson of Jamaica, Kenny Anthony, former minister of St. Lucia. You have Keith Rowley, former prime minister of Trinidad and Tobago, who's come out and supported this as well. Should Mr. Christie and Mr. Ingram speak up? I hear Mr. Christie commenting and speaking on Junkanoo matters and these sorts of things. Are they letting us down by not joining in this conversation, that the Bahamas or these former leaders of the Bahamas are not joining with some of their fellow elder statesmen in the region to defend peace? Should questions be asked of Mr. Ingram and Mr. Christie in terms of why they are remaining silent on the issue?
Yes, I agree. I think they should. I think they should, because they ask for commentary on just about everything else under the moon once they get the mic in front of them. I think they should speak on this because they have the history, they have the expertise, they have the experience. And they, as far as remember when they said that the Hurricane Dorian, when they said that they gave Dr. Menace all sorts of heck because he didn't bring in both of them to advise. I think they should send out something. I hope with the partisan and the other gentlemen and the other leaders stepping forward, taking that stance. I think it may lead them to do that. But all I'm saying is, and this is when I really appreciate Sir Lyndon with standing on business when it comes to this country. You understand? Because this you can't let people experiment and play around. This is no game. Because we depend on tourism, we depend on so much different things as far as with investors and whatever have you. If this place becomes, this region becomes a war zone, it's not only going to affect where the ships are parked right now. This is going to affect the whole Caribbean. It's going to affect this whole area. So persons are not going to be interested. They're going to be fearful of coming into a war zone area. So this is what they need to look at. And our senior statesman, needs to send out a statement or give commentary or send out a statement in relation to this. Like you said, let's go the peaceful route because everyone is innocent. No one deserves to be blown up the way those men. Well, and it's going to add, it's going to add, the numbers, they're adding up. So no one wants that. No, everyone is innocent. The worst of the worst sits in prison all over the world.
I hear you, Pat. Thank you for your call. We have to take this last break on our program. We're running to a break. We'll be right back. We're back on our program, Issues of the Day, 326-8255, 322-5683, 322-577. Our numbers to call it a day. And just to wrap up, my point about Mr. Christian Ingram, and not that I want to confine Mr. Christie and Mr. Ingram to taking a certain position on this issue, because I anticipate that they may have different feelings than the majority of you, perhaps, maybe. But even if so, why the resounding silence when so many former leaders of CARICOM countries have gone on the record to take a position, and with an explanation, we could be comfortable. But the piercing silence, I don't think so. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to our program, Issues of the Day today. I have been your host, Christian Jones. Mr. Kishner, Mr. Craig Gibson, rather, has been your technical producer today. And once again, we thank you as well for your calls and contributions, and also thank our sponsors this morning, the Air Conditioning Depot, Kentucky Fried Chicken, Gaming Board for the Bahamas, Pender Enterprises Limited, Super Wash, and City of Hope. Thank you, and have a good afternoon.
Numbers that we had to move